So today I got home after my third day of my semester up at college. It was on YouTube, and I saw Robert Downey Jr.'s face on a Joe Rogan podcast clip and realized, oh my gosh, Joe Rogan's going to be able to talk to Donald Trump someday. that's the way this thing is going with it. The trajectory for his guests. They just keep on getting more and more famous. Like when he had Kevin Hart on, I was like, he's reached his peak. But no. Robert Downey Jr.? Are you kidding me? Yeah, he talked to. I mean, it's insane. One of my friends who doesn't really like Joe Rogan all that much. I'm like, look, dude, the number one reason I listen to Joe Rogan is because of the guests he has on. And he's a really good interviewer. He asks really good questions. And he does long interviews with very, very interesting people. And he is able to have conversations with people that you'll never hear on any other format, any other show. His Elon Musk podcast. There's never been an interview that good with Elon Musk. And there may never be another one that's as good as the one that Joe Rogan did. And, the guy, it's insane. It's insane the caliber of guests he has lately had on his show, really in the past year, 2 years. It's ridiculous. But yeah, RDJ went on the JRE podcast. And overall, it was only about like an hour and 10-minute podcast, something like that. I had to watch it, and I was like, well, if you're going to watch it, you're probably going to want to talk about it. And, well, here I am talking to you about that podcast. But anyways, I thought it was a really good conversation. Robert Downey Jr. is, I've always kind of thought he was kind of a more real dude compared to some other Hollywood actors, given the nature of his past with addiction. Also, I'll never forget, he won some sort of award once, and instead of spending the whole time, talking about the award and how much it meant to him, he spent the entire speech. This was like in 2008. He won some big award. He spent the entire time asking everyone in the crowd and in Hollywood to forgive Mel Gibson for all of Mel Gibson's insanities. And, of course, there are quite a few of those. But I remember, ever since I saw that, I was like, Robert Downey Jr., I bet he's a genuinely pretty cool guy. And from that and this podcast, I believe even more so. Obviously, everybody has a filter whenever they're out on the digital space, so who knows? But for the most part, I thought RDJ really was the real Iron Man where it counted. Yeah, he seems to have a good heart, guys. But yeah, to cover some of the things that were talked about in the podcast, I thought they talked about whether or not Robert would go back to being Iron Man ever, and kind of thought that was a useless question on Joe's part. Obviously, RDJ's never going to come back, and it would be a crime against the art of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to bring him back, because it wouldn't make any sense and it would just be for cash. And so I thought that part of the podcast was a little useless, a little annoying. But then really where the podcast for me became something really worth listening to was whenever Joe talked to RDJ about one of my favorite movies, which is Tropic Thunder. And this is where the podcast got a little bit interesting too, because I could tell RDJ was kind of watching his words regarding Tropic Thunder. Because if you guys have not seen Tropic Thunder out there or don't know what it is, it's a movie where Robert Downey Jr. plays a white actor who is trying to be a black guy. He undergoes controversial skin pigmentation. He changes his skin to being black, and he tries to be a method actor and play a black guy. But what's so hilarious about the movie is that he's playing a stereotype that some white people have of how a black person behaves. And that's what's so hilarious in that movie. And that's why that movie is incredible and incredibly hilarious. But Joe's question to Robert Downey Jr. was, do you think that movie could ever be made today? And Robert Downey Jr.'s reaction, I thought, was overall really good. It was really funny. Him talking about how it seemed insane at the time, how his wife thought that this is so bad, but so true. You kind of have to do it. His mom was like, don't do it. Don't do it, Robert. I've got a bad feeling about this. All that stuff was really, really funny. The only thing I really wanted to get out of that little portion of the podcast is I did not want Robert Downey Jr. to apologize for the role, because I figured that he might disown the role. It's, you know, if he ever gets heat, because I've talked about this before, like, you know, that movie is so funny. And what they do in that movie is actually really nuanced and in a very clever way. And if he apologized for that role, for doing the blackface thing, I would lose a lot of respect for him if he did. It seems like at one part in the discussion, it seemed like he was going to somewhat apologize. I don't really think that he did. So overall, his Tropic Thunder dialogue, it was satisfactory for me. It was very funny. It was very funny to hear about the behind the scenes of that movie, and how Ben Stiller got all of the backlash for doing the Simple Jack retarded thing, whereas RDJ didn't really get any backlash. And it was just, that was a really funny part of the podcast. Really, really interesting, and that's where I really, really got involved. But then also, I mean, the rest of the podcast, learning about just kind of what it's like to be Robert Downey Jr. was pretty fascinating. You know, he's ultra level famous. It was cool that, like, I mean, it's interesting to hear about how, you know, he hadn't really had time up until like yesterday or a couple days ago to catch up with his Marvel co-stars since Endgame. He hadn't really had time, but now he finally got to have dinner with them. And it's interesting to think about how you can make something with some people, be really proud of it, but not really be able to talk about it and be friends for months. You know, it just, I thought that was pretty interesting. Also learning that Robert Downey Jr. is into martial arts. Did not know that. Learning about just his whole mindset towards his work, towards his, you know, his lifestyle, towards, you know, just the way that he is. I thought he was really fascinating. And, yeah, just really good podcast, really good discussion. Would recommend, if you haven't listened to the Robert Downey Jr. Joe Rogan podcast, I would recommend that you do listen to it, because it's only like an hour and 10 minutes long, and it's pretty cool, legit. I will say at the end of the podcast, it looked like Robert Downey Jr. wanted to continue talking, whereas Joe was done for some reason. Don't know why, but don't know why he decided to cut it off where he cut it off. You know, it's funny. Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Sergeant Lincoln Osiris in Tropic Thunder, was actually an inspiration for one of my own YouTube very bizarre characters known as the Denim Dude. I got the voice. The voice is really what I picked up. The Denim Dude is, he basically has the same voice as Sergeant Lincoln Osiris. I'll leave like a end screen where you can see all about the Denim Dude, and you know him, you know, fixing up some crawfish, man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Give me some. You know, like that's basically who the Denim Dude is. But yeah, seriously, good podcast. If you'd like to see my podcast, I have a podcast called Carter the Brown Speaks. I've talked about Robert Downey Jr. on that. I'll leave an in screen for the latest episode. It involves smoking cigars. I don't have famous people on my podcast, but I do have cigars. It's gonna act like that's significant. But anyways, yeah, check out those two things. Give me a thumbs up or a subscribe, you know, or both. And please do have a wonderful day, and never forget that you too can be Iron Man.